Hi, I'm Rev Myron. I'm a minister through Pathways of Light, and I've been a Course in Miracles student for 40 years. This year, I started going through the text, looking at it a paragraph or two at a time, and asking Jesus to clarify for me. And then I write from that clarity. And that's what I'm sharing with you today. So let's get started. We're looking at Principles of Miracles, number 25, 26, and 27. So 25 tells us this: miracles are part of an interlocking chain of forgiveness, which completed is the atonement. Atonement works all the time and in all the dimensions of time. I can visualize an interlocking chain of forgiveness. I can see it in two ways. One way is when I become aware of an ego belief and choose to allow that to be healed, and other similar or connected beliefs are healed as well. An example that comes to mind occurred the other day when I was having my moment with the Apple support team. It seemed that the tech I was working with was being as deliberately unhelpful as he could be, and I felt angry and resentful. I chose to see the situation differently. That is, I forgave it, and everything changed. I forgave the idea that my brother was separate from me, which was linked to the belief that I'm a victim, which was linked to the belief that something outside me has power over me. If I were to visualize this differently, I would see them as dominoes. I knocked over the first one and it fell to the next, and that one into the next. Thus, in forgiving the first idea, other ideas were forgiven as well. Another way the chain could work is that I forgive a situation or person, and others are affected, perhaps being inspired to their own forgiveness process. Even if they are unaware a change has occurred within their mind and what that means, it will have begun. I have noticed that as I have forgiven more deeply and more often, I feel happier and calmer. I seldom become angry or upset, and when I do, forgiveness is always my immediate response. Also, I have noticed that the people around me respond to me differently. Sometimes it's obvious, as when someone in my circle of acquaintances who in the past disliked me or was ambivalent toward me suddenly seems to have changed her mind. For my part, I forgave her, or another way to say it is I recognized she had done nothing to me. She is part of this little play I think of as my life. I gave her the role she plays in the script she speaks from. She is in my play to support me in my awakening process. And since all of this is an illusion, who has done what and where? Another way I see this relationship is that every word that comes from her is then interpreted as to meaning. My choice of interpreters, the ego or the Holy Spirit, determines how I feel about her. Noticing how separate I feel from her, I let go of the ego and choose the Holy Spirit instead. What I forgive is not her at all, as she is as innocent as she was in her creation. I am instead forgiving my projections onto her. Now I am free to see her as she really is, to see with Christ's vision. And choosing to see her as innocent, I no longer feel any animosity toward her, and in fact, feel gratitude and love. I stopped avoiding her, and one day when I saw her, I asked her how she was doing, and because I really wanted to know, she told me. Our relationship shifted because of forgiveness. I see her differently, and it's obvious that she sees me differently. Will she continue this chain of forgiveness? Probably. She may be consciously or unconsciously inspired to do so when next she has a troubled relationship. I don't know the next link in the chain, as that is not my part. Jesus is in charge of the atonement because he sees a completed process and knew that she was ready for what I could offer if I chose to. For my part, seeing such a clear demonstration of the atonement principle at work increased my confidence and encouraged me to forgive more often. I saw that all the forgiveness happened in my mind, and yet it affected the people around me. Who knows how many other people will be affected? Because I had faith in what I read in the course and did the work when I had no reason to trust the outcome, I have experienced its effects and now embraced the work with joy and gratitude. I have no trouble believing that the atonement works all the time and no longer need proof. I just accept that where I am is where Jesus needs me, and what is in front of me is the next link in the chain. Also, I'm intrigued by the statement that it works in all dimensions of time. There's so much that is unknown to us here in this dimension. Now, this is principle number 26. Miracles represent freedom from fear. Atoning means undoing. The undoing of fear is the essential part of the atonement value of miracles. The world is a scary place. This is true even when it seems beautiful, peaceful, or loving. Even when the world is briefly perfect in my experience, fear is never far away because change is never far away. I can be having a lovely day, having fun with friends and family, and the ego mind will be busy in the background offering me fear. The mind will relate this good experience to something in the past that was not so good. Or it will compare this loving moment with my child to one in which we had a disagreement. The ego will go into the past to find something to regret, or it will project into the future to find something to dread. Thus, peace is never complete and fear is only a thought away. We did this. We made this illusory world as a way to experience separation. It's not real and it's not our home. So there is a way to undo what we have done. There is a guide to help us find the tools that have been placed within the illusion to help free our mind from the illusion. And our guide will help us to use those books. A Course in Miracles is such a tool. And through the study and practice of the Course, my guide has directed me to many processes that have led to the miracles that represent freedom from fear. One such process was from the book Inner Healing by Dan Joseph. These 3 steps involve acknowledging our inner block, any distressing thought or feeling, becoming willing to prayerfully release that block, opening to an inner experience of divine comfort and peace. I worked with this process literally for years. At first, it was hard work and often discouraging because I did not fully desire the change. There were distressing thoughts and feelings that I wanted to keep. Eventually, as my willingness grew stronger, I accepted the changes and I began to experience a miracle of freedom from fear. The process has evolved over time, though the elements of the process have not. I'm vigilant for my thoughts and feelings that are blocks to my happiness. I do the process consistently, and it has worked for me. There have been others as well. Whichever process I'm guided to use, the goal is the same. I learned that I have been identified with an illusory self that thinks it is separated from its creator, and this is the source of all my fears. As I let go of that identification, the memory of my true self returns to me. In other words, I'm allowing the illusions to be undone, and the result is a miracle that brings me freedom from fear. This process is not complete yet, but so far has been absolutely amazing. So let's look at principle 27. A miracle is a universal blessing from God through me to all my brothers. It is a privilege of the forgiven to forgive. My son hurt his back when he was in college. Sometimes the pain was very intense. When this happened, I would be filled with concern for him. I wanted him to be healed of this injury so much and to finally free from this pain. But I also had the thought this might not happen for him. I know someone who suffered all his adult life from a back injury with no relief. Thinking of this, I would be overcome with fear for my son. This kind of thinking created feelings of fear and anxiety for my son. The whole story of my son injured and in pain is a construction of the mind, as is everything we think of as a world. We made it up. It is not real. There is no power outside the mind, not in the body or in anything. The solution is always forgiveness. I forgave myself for seeing myself as separate from God, for seeing myself and others as bodies. I forgave myself for seeing my son as a body. And I forgave myself for seeing myself as separate from my son and separate from others. I asked the Holy Spirit to undo what I have done. After I'd prayed, I felt the knot in my stomach loosen. I allowed my thoughts to be corrected and the peace of God flood my mind. True thoughts began to surface in my mind, and I knew that forgiveness was moving from God through me to my son. It is the privilege of the forgiven to forgive. I didn't know how this would affect his story. My story is my business, my opportunity to forgive. His story is his business. However, there is something I do know. As we begin to undo the ego through forgiveness, our acceptance spreads through the mind and makes it easier for others to accept as well. This is why it will not take an endless amount of time for us to wake up, as it would seem it if each and every person had to come to this place of acceptance starting from a completely confused mind. We do share one mind, and when you experience a healing of that mind, I am affected by that healing as well. This may not happen on a conscious level, but it does happen. Perhaps if next time I decide to let go of a grievance, I'll be surprised at how easily I forgive. But however it appears in any individual story, each person's healing has uplifted us all. Each time any of us choose forgiveness, we make it easier and more likely that my son too will choose to forgive his belief in pain, suffering, and death. We owe such a debt of gratitude to each other. And I have much gratitude for you guys for being here, for sharing these readings with me. If you found this helpful, then please like it. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. And I'll be back tomorrow with another reading.